Prince and Princess of Wales have been struck by a slightly worrying security scare. Two masked men broke into Windsor Castle estate and stole two vehicles from a barn just a short distance away from where they live at Adelaide Cottage.
Good evening, Harold here. Breaking news tonight that has completely shaken the foundations of the British royal family. We are not talking about simple palace gossip anymore. We are not talking about leaked emails, frozen faces on a balcony, or another endless feud in the tabloids. We are talking about an unmapped 17th century subterranean security breach beneath the floorboards of Adelaide Cottage that forced the Prince and Princess of Wales to flee into the midnight rain with their three children. According to security logs and forensic reports obtained exclusively by our team, what was uncovered beneath that home has devastated the entire institution. The stakes could not be higher. When the sanctuary of the future king and queen is compromised from the inside, the entire facade of royal protection collapses. Tonight, we expose what was found beneath the floorboards, why it was buried for decades, and how a family's quiet life was shattered in 17 minutes. I have spent years going through everything that moves around this family, the filings, the official records, and the stories that get buried before anyone finishes asking questions. What you are about to hear is me putting the pieces together the way I read them. The truth behind this midnight evacuation is far more unsettling than anyone in official channels is willing to admit. It was a Tuesday in late November, roughly 1:45. Adelaide Cottage sat wrapped in the quiet stillness of the Windsor grounds. William and Catherine had gone up to bed hours earlier. Their children, George, Charlotte and Louis, were fast asleep in their rooms. Outside, the night air was freezing, flat and grey. Inside, the house was supposed to be a sanctuary. They had chosen this modest home on purpose. They wanted grass, open doors, and a real childhood for three young royal minds. They wanted to escape the gold leaf, the endless galleries, and the fishbowl existence of London. But modern houses on ancient royal land carry old secrets beneath their carpets. The silence broke without a siren. Catastrophes rarely announce themselves with loud alarms. They begin with tiny, unnoticed shifts in the atmosphere. Inside the walls of Adelaide Cottage, quiet infrared sensors registered a tiny change in air pressure. Something was moving in a space where nothing should ever move. William woke first. Years of military training and flight duty had rewired his body to respond to the slightest change in his environment. He sat up in the dark, listening to the subtle shift in air currents as protection officers began moving quickly through the lower corridors. Catherine woke seconds behind him, pulling herself up in that quiet, instinctive way mothers do when something feels wrong. Neither of them spoke a word. When you spend your entire adult life living under constant observation, you learn early that in the first minute of a crisis, listening tells you far more than asking. The knock on their bedroom door was soft, but it did not stop. William crossed the room in 4 long strides and pulled the door open. Standing in the dim hallway was Marcus Headley, the head of their personal protection detail. His face told the entire story before his mouth even opened. 3 heavy security officers held tactical positions behind him in the corridor. No one was going to offer polite reassurances tonight. No one was sending this family back to sleep. Headley leaned in and spoke in a low voice. Earlier that evening, structural engineers had gone into the foundations to check ordinary stonework. Underneath the cottage lay a network of ancient passages older than the building itself. The records missed it. Security sweeps missed it. The official archives had nothing on it. But the engineers had not just found old stone, they had found evidence of recent human life down in the dark. Not century-old dust, fresh footprints, unrusted tools resting against historic brickwork, empty water bottles with store purchase dates from just weeks prior, a clean folding chair, a fresh thermal blanket, and photographs. Dozens of detailed photographs of the Wales family going about their ordinary days. Pictures taken from angles that proved the person holding the camera knew every shift change, every walk to school, and every hour the house went quiet. Someone had been sitting beneath their floorboards while the family slept above. Headley delivered the core truth in 5 short words. They were under the house. Hi viewers. If you woke up tonight to discover a complete stranger had been silently watching your family from underneath your own home, would you pack up your kids and leave immediately, or stay and fight for your sanctuary? Drop a quick one-word comment below right now, because your instant reaction shows how you protect the ones you love. And if you truly care about stopping these security breakdowns, hit that subscribe button right now to support our independent truth. Let those 5 words sink into your mind. They were under the house. Not outside at the iron perimeter gates, not sitting over the high brick walls, not hiding in the tree lines with a long camera lens like the thousands of paparazzi who have chased this family for 4 decades. The intruder was sitting directly under the wooden floorboards of the bedrooms where 3 innocent children slept. Catherine did not ask a single administrative question. She did not wait for the rest of the briefing. The very moment she realized her children were exposed, she was already moving down the dark hallway. Publicly, she has built an image out of grace, poise, and unfaltering calm. In that corridor, the public image vanished. Behind it stood a protective mother who makes every choice through one single filter, the survival and peace of her 3 young children. William stood near the doorway, watching her go from bed to bed. Her low voice stayed steady as she woke George, Charlotte, and Louis, whispering that they were going on an unannounced late-night adventure. George, 11 years old, already understands that his life carries strange burdens other kids never meet. Charlotte, 9, and remarkably sharp, sat up and asked the one question that sliced right through her mother's soft story. "Are we safe here, Mummy?" Catherine paused. It lasted half a second, no more. William saw the pause from the doorway, and he understood the immense emotional cost of that single moment. How do you tell your 9-year-old daughter that her home is no longer safe? How do you keep your voice from trembling when your entire world is cracking open? The evacuation moved with cold, mechanical speed. Security teams rehearse emergency drills over and over, hoping to age out of service without ever using them. William carried 6-year-old Louis down the stairs, the small boy resting his sleepy face against his father's shoulder. Catherine followed closely behind, keeping a firm hand on George and Charlotte. Staff had pulled pre-packed emergency bags from secured lockers, bags updated 4 times a year, specifically for moments when a family must disappear into the night. 3 dark armored vehicles waited on the gravel drive with their engines running. Armed officers with earpieces held positions in the pitch-black cold. The Princess of Wales stood on her own drive in the freezing November wind, a winter coat thrown over her nightclothes, holding one of her son's small shoes in her hand because it had fallen off on the stairs. She forced a reassuring smile down at her confused children so they would not see the fear. Before stepping into the black car, Catherine turned back for one last look. Adelaide Cottage was supposed to be their peaceful answer to grand palaces. They had moved there in 2022 to give their children normal grass and a quiet life. Now, the home stood dark against the trees, its warm windows transformed into something cold, strange, and deeply terrifying. William's hand found hers in the dark. He held it tight. As he sat in that car carrying his sleepy boy, he was haunted by a ghost from his past. Decades ago, another royal mother carried 2 young boys through the night to escape the fortress walls. Princess Diana did it to give her sons an hour of normal freedom away from the institution. Now, her eldest son was carrying his own child through the dark for the exact opposite reason. He was running away from an invisible threat that had tracked them down anyway. The motorcade pulled away from Adelaide Cottage at exactly 43 minutes past midnight. Behind them, the historic property was instantly converted into 3 distinct operational zones: a crime scene, a historical excavation site, and a massive security failure that would soon reach the highest levels of government. If you care about real accountability and believe this family deserves true protection, smash that like button right now. If you walk away without liking or subscribing, you are turning your back on the truth and letting these dangerous breakdowns stay hidden behind palace walls. Subscribe now, because the real terror was only beginning down in those dark stone walls. Before we step down into those freezing stone passages, take a second right now to subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. The official communications teams at the palace are desperate to keep the complete mapping of these subterranean tunnels hidden from the public record, but we are committed to bringing you these exhaustive, untold investigations every single week. Do not miss a single chapter. The motorcade vanished into the night toward a secure, undisclosed staging ground, leaving Adelaide Cottage completely submerged in high-intensity floodlights. By midnight, white tactical tents were sprouted across the rain-slicked lawns. Specialist units with ground-penetrating radar rigs and portable forensic lighting arrived under total radio silence. Detective Chief Inspector Sarah Wright took command of the site, standing beside Dr. Helena Ashworth, a senior archivist from the Royal Collection Trust, who had been woken and rushed to Windsor under police escort. The two women stood at the breach. It was a narrow, hidden access point, concealed behind a false section of historic brickwork in the lower sub-basement of the cottage. Cold air pushed up from the opening, carrying the bitter scent of wet earth, copper, and damp stone. Dr. Ashworth scanned her historic architectural diagrams, her hand trembling slightly under the harsh halogen lamps. The subterranean passages were not modern additions. They were built in the mid-1600s as concealed escape routes during the English Civil War, constructed directly beneath Tudor and Stuart structural foundations. Over 3 centuries, as royal properties were rebuilt, renovated, and remapped, these specific subterranean corridors were simply lost to bureaucracy. A filing error in the late 19th century had omitted the Adelaide connection from modern digital property logs. The gap was massive. The oversight was staggering. DCI Wright descended the narrow iron ladder into the darkness, her tactical flashlight beam cutting through clouds of suspended dust. The floor of the tunnel was cold, packed clay. As her team advanced with radar scanners, the true scale of the network began to map out on their handheld monitors. These tunnels did not just sit quietly beneath Adelaide Cottage. They stretched outward like a spiderweb under the royal estate. One major artery stretched straight toward Frogmore Cottage. Another extended deeper into the estate grounds toward Royal Lodge. A third branch climbed subtly upward toward the massive foundation stones of Windsor Castle itself. Think about that map. A person sitting down in these cold stone corridors held unmonitored, subterranean access to almost every major royal residence on the Windsor perimeter. No thermal cameras on the high fences could see them. No armed patrols walking the tree line could spot them. Then came the main chamber. Directly 20 feet below the floorboards of 6-year-old Prince Louis's bedroom, the tunnel widened into a small, dry alcove. This was where the intruder had built his nerve center. DCI Wright shone her beam across the space. What she found was not the chaotic dump site of a casual trespasser. It was an organized, long-term observation post. A heavy folding camp chair sat in the middle of the alcove. Beside it was a small wooden crate functioning as a desk. On the crate lay 3 transistor radios, spare lithium batteries, and a low-frequency scanner set to mirror local emergency service bands. Stacked neatly against the stone wall were dozens of preserved food rations, water bottles, and clean thermal blankets. Forensics began tagging the evidence immediately. They checked manufacture dates on the plastic wrappers and tested the dust buildup on the seat. The revelation hit the investigation team like a physical blow. The intruder had not broken into the estate last night. He had not slipped past the outer perimeter last week. Based on the degradation of materials, the accumulation of waste, and the dated field journals recovered from the crate, this individual had been living and observing from beneath the Wales family home for 2 full years. 2 years, through 2 full Christmases, through summer holidays, through early morning breakfasts and late-night bedtimes. While the public debated the royal family's security budgets and media coverage, a shadow was sitting silently below their feet, watching their lives unfold through the floorboards. Look at the terrifying reality of that timeline. Every private conversation William and Catherine had in their kitchen, every bedtime story read to 3 young children, every moment of vulnerability when they thought the world was locked outside their heavy wooden doors, it was all happening directly above an unmapped room, holding a man who tracked their every move. If this shocking security collapse leaves you stunned, click that like button right now. Staying silent now means ignoring the unbelievable vulnerabilities that threaten real human lives. Hit subscribe immediately to make sure you do not miss the deep forensic breakdowns we are bringing to light. DCI Wright walked deeper into the alcove, her boots crunching on small bits of broken gravel. She knelt near the back wall, where a fresh excavation shaft had been roughly dug out with hand tools. This new shaft bypassed modern infrared tripwires that had been installed along the cottage's exterior foundation 2 years ago. The intruder knew precisely where the security field ended. He had dug his way right around it. How did an outsider get access to secret, high-level security placements? The investigation was no longer just about a lone intruder resting in a dark tunnel. It was turning into a potential inside breach of catastrophic proportions. DCI Wright spotted a small, heavy-duty plastic container wedged into a crevice in the newly dug wall. She slipped on fresh latex gloves and pulled it free. Inside the container was a thick leather notebook and a stack of high-resolution photographic prints. She flipped through the photographs under her flashlight. The first photo showed William loading luggage into his car in the private driveway. The second showed Catherine walking through the private gardens holding Charlotte's hand. The third photo was a clear shot of Prince Louis playing near his bedroom window. Then DCI Wright looked at the timestamp stamped on the bottom corner of the final photograph. Her chest tightened. The photograph had been taken less than 48 hours ago. The intruder had not vanished weeks in advance. He had not abandoned his post in the distant past. He was sitting in that subterranean chair, holding a high-powered lens up toward the house, right up until the exact moment the structural sweep began. He had heard the engineers coming through his scanner. He had packed his primary gear and vanished into the deeper, unmapped network seconds before the security team breached the wall. He was still somewhere inside the system. Do not look away from this screen, because in our next chapter, we step into the mind of the primary suspect and expose the shocking secret profile that sent shockwaves all the way to King Charles at Clarence House. You will see the exact handwritten entry found on page 42 of that recovered notebook, an entry that explicitly details his next planned target location. You cannot afford to miss what comes next. Hit subscribe right now, ring the bell, and join me in the very next breakdown as the hunt for the Windsor intruder escalates into a national emergency. By 2 o'clock that same morning, an emergency briefing folder was delivered straight into the hands of King Charles III at Clarence House. The monarch did not sit down. He walked the long length of his study, holding the high-resolution evidence photos in his hands, while senior security directors stood silently near the doors. The past does not stay buried in royal life. It resurfaces when you least expect it. Charles knew the terrifying historical weight of this breach. He remembered 1982, when Michael Fagan climbed into his mother's bedroom at Buckingham Palace. He remembered late 2021, when an intruder, armed with a weapon, stepped onto the Windsor grounds. But most of all, he remembered walking behind Diana's coffin in 1997. He understood the devastating reality of a camera lens tracking a family's every move. To know that someone had dug beneath Adelaide Cottage to watch his grandchildren was not just a failure of modern estate security. It was an attack on the sovereign line. The king made one quiet demand: find him before the sunrise. While tactical units searched the tunnel network, forensic psychologist Dr. Miranda Foster sat in a mobile control center, analyzing the recovered leather notebook. Page by page, a deeply troubling psychological profile began to take shape. The suspect was identified as Malcolm Hendricks, a 47-year-old former museum curator from Kent. Hendricks was not an uneducated intruder. He was an archivist with deep knowledge of 17th century royal architecture and forgotten military escapes. But over 5 years, his academic interest had mutated into a toxic, parasocial obsession. He ran an anonymous digital hub, calling itself the Windsor Truth Seeker. He convinced himself that hidden Civil War treasures and lost royal documents were buried under Adelaide Cottage. In his mind, the Wales family were not real people. They were merely obstacles standing over his historical breakthrough. His notebooks revealed a steady, terrifying decline in logic. What started as simple architectural maps slowly degraded into detailed schedules of the children's school runs, mealtimes, and bedtime routines. He had convinced himself that he was part of their daily life. Think about the sheer scale of that delusion. A man sitting in the dark, writing notes while hearing a child's footsteps just inches above his head. If this dark psychological breach unsettles you as much as it did the security teams, hit that like button right now. Do not ignore these revelations. Subscribe to this channel immediately to support real, hard-hitting investigations into the secrets they try to keep hidden. Meanwhile, inside a secured wing at Kensington Palace, Prince William sat down with 11-year-old Prince George. The rain beat against the heavy glass windows. William looked into his son's eyes. How does a father explain an intrusion of this magnitude without destroying a child's sense of safety forever? William had made a silent promise years ago, honoring the legacy of his late mother, Princess Diana. He promised he would never build emotional walls around his children. He promised he would talk to them with absolute honesty. He told George that bad people sometimes chase stories they do not understand. He promised that their protection team would fix the problem. But George, already maturing under the immense pressure of his royal destiny, simply looked at his father and asked if they would ever be allowed to go home to Adelaide Cottage again. William could not answer. Back at the Windsor control post, transcribers were working through the final pages of Hendricks's field journal. The writing became rushed and jagged near the end. The last entry was written only hours before the midnight sweep. It read, "They are above me now. I can hear the floorboards. It is time to move to the main gate." The words sent an absolute shockwave through the command center. Hendricks was not just hiding. He had moved on to his next objective. At 4 in the morning, heavily armed response units stormed a small rented cottage 3 miles away, on the edge of the Windsor estate. The door was battered down. Flashbangs lit up the dark interior. The room was completely empty of people. Instead, officers found a warm cup of coffee resting on a desk. Beside it was an active police scanner humming with live static. Pinned across the main wall was a massive, highly detailed blueprint layout of Sandringham House and Balmoral Castle. Red marker circles were drawn over the primary private entrances. He was listening to them. He knew they were coming, and he had already targeted the family's next sanctuary. Stop right here. Do not close this screen, because in our very next chapter, the crisis spills into the public eye. You will discover how the palace attempted to cover up the evacuation with an 11-word press release, and the heartbreaking moment Princess Catherine realized their peaceful family sanctuary was permanently destroyed. You cannot afford to miss a single second of the escalation. Subscribe right now, hit that bell, and stay tuned for the next immediate chapter of this unfolding story. If you are tracking this security escalation with us, smash that like button right now and drop a comment below. Could you ever sleep in a home again after discovering something like this buried beneath your floorboards? Speak your mind, because your engagement keeps these crucial investigations alive. By 9 o'clock the following morning, the public machine was moving. The Royal Communications Unit released an 11-word statement to the press. The Prince and Princess of Wales are relocating their primary residence for scheduled infrastructure works. Scheduled infrastructure works. That is how a historic, high-stakes security breach gets dressed up for television news broadcasts. Cable news anchors read the statement off teleprompters with calm expressions. Columnists wrote light commentary pieces about royal property maintenance and structural upgrades. Commentators on social media complained about the cost of historic estate upkeep, calling the sudden move a lavish overreaction. They had no idea. They did not see the white tactical tents erected across the private lawns. They did not hear the high-pitched hum of concrete saws cutting through historic subfloors down in the dark. They did not know that 3 young children were currently sitting in a heavily fortified wing of Kensington Palace, completely displaced from their daily routines. That was not routine maintenance. That was an emergency evacuation. Behind closed doors, the human cost was setting in hard. The emotional damage from a breach like this does not wash away when you move to a new building. It stays in your mind. It lingers in every quiet room. 6-year-old Prince Louis woke up twice during his first night at Kensington Palace, crying about monsters living under his bed. How do you comfort a 6-year-old child when his nightmare was actually real? 9-year-old Princess Charlotte began walking through her new bedroom every night, checking the heavy brass door handles over and over to make sure they were latched. 11-year-old Prince George grew quietly hypervigilant. He stopped watching his television screen and began watching his father's eyes, searching his face for subtle signs of danger. A child's innocence is fragile. Once it breaks, no amount of royal privilege can glue it back together. Look at what this family surrendered. They did not leave Adelaide Cottage because they wanted grander living quarters. They left because their attempt at a peaceful, normal life was shattered by an obsessed shadow. 3 days after the midnight escape, Catherine did something that surprised her entire protection detail. She requested a private, unannounced escort back to Adelaide Cottage. She did not go to collect clothes. She did not go to retrieve personal belongings. She walked alone through the quiet rooms. The furniture was covered in dust sheets. The air felt cold, still, and heavy. She stood in the center of her children's empty play space, listening to the creak of the floorboards under her boots. Below those exact boards, forensic officers were still tagging evidence in a damp, muddy tunnel network. She realized a devastating truth in that silent room. You can build high brick walls around an estate. You can station armed officers at every gate. You can install state-of-the-art thermal cameras across every perimeter fence. But you can never completely block out the dark, parasocial fixations of the outside world. The sanctuary was gone. It could never be brought back. She walked out of the front door, pulled her coat tight around her shoulders, and closed the wooden door behind her. She would never live in that home again. If you feel the real emotional weight of what this young family went through, smash that like button right now. Leaving a like is not just clicking a button, it shows you stand with victims of invasive breaches. Subscribe immediately so you do not miss our final accounting. While Catherine was standing in that quiet house, intelligence agencies were elevating the search to a Tier 1 national security manhunt. MI5 Digital Forensics had cleared the suspect's recovered laptop from the rented cottage. What they discovered pushed the crisis into an absolute emergency. Malcolm Hendricks had not just mapped physical tunnels under Windsor, he had accessed internal digital logs. Just hours before the midnight sweep began, Hendricks logged into an internal estate server using encrypted access codes. He pulled up updated security guard shifts, movement schedules, and transport route maps for the Wales family's upcoming holiday travel. He knew where they were moving before the vehicles even left the driveway. He was not running away in blind panic. He was staying 3 steps ahead of the investigation team, tracking their movements in real time while disappearing into thin air. The shadow was no longer sitting in a cold tunnel beneath their floorboards. The shadow was out in the world, holding their confidential security schedule in his hands. Do not close this video, because in our 5th and final chapter, we face the dramatic showdown and the impossible choices resting on Prince William's shoulders. You will see the final intelligence report on Malcolm Hendricks, the lasting impact on the royal estate security apparatus, and the decisive move William made to protect his children's future. Subscribe right now, hit the bell, and come with me into the final chapter to cast your vote on what this family must do next. Prince William stood in a high-ceilinged room at Kensington Palace, looking out at the grey expanse of Kensington Gardens. It was Christmas Eve. Below his window, armed officers walked the perimeter under high winter coats. The family was trapped in a classic, brutal, no-win scenario. Look at the options resting on William's shoulders. Scenario 1. Return to Adelaide Cottage after turning the property into a high-tech bunker. Pour thousands of tons of concrete into those 17th century subterranean tunnels. Install motion sensors, tripwires, and steel doors. But every time your 6-year-old son steps onto his bedroom carpet, he will remember that something dark used to live beneath his floorboards. The home is ruined. The peace is gone. Scenario 2. Move permanently back into Kensington Palace. Accept the massive stone walls, the deep iron gates, and the endless line of security officers. Protect your children behind historical fortresses. But in doing so, you sacrifice the open grass, the simple privacy, and the normal childhood you promised your wife you would protect at all costs. Scenario 3. Live under permanent armed lockdown at Sandringham or Royal Lodge. Keep moving your children from estate to estate whenever an anonymous security alert pops up on an internal monitor. Put 3 young minds through an endless cycle of packed emergency bags, dark motorcades, and whispered late-night evacuations. There was no clean choice. Every path carried heavy emotional costs. William thought back to his childhood. He remembered Princess Diana taking him and Harry out of palace gates without heavy protection, eager to show them real life, bus stops, and open fields. She wanted them to feel the air outside the cage. William had tried so hard to build that exact same life for George, Charlotte, and Louis at Adelaide Cottage. He wanted normal doors. He wanted grass. He wanted a home where his children could run without holding a security badge. And now, the dark fixations of the outside world had dug right under his foundation to steal it away. The obsession of Malcolm Hendricks proved one single, devastating point. Hendricks spent years searching through 17th century archivist logs, hunting for forgotten Civil War gold and lost historical documents. He spent 2 years living in cold clay, breathing damp dust, and sitting under floorboards. And what did he actually find? He found no gold. He found no hidden historical treasures. He found only old stone, wet earth, and the private lives of a young family trying to raise 3 children in peace. His obsession stripped that family of their sanctuary, leaving behind deep psychological scars that no security overhaul will ever completely heal. By late December, counter-terrorism divisions and national intelligence agencies cornered Malcolm Hendricks near a rural transport hub in northern England. He was taken into custody without further incident. The physical threat was ended. The suspect was behind heavy steel doors, but the shadow lingers. You cannot unring a bell that rings at midnight. You cannot unsee a photograph of your child taken from a hole in your own subfloor. If you believe a family's safety and peace should always come before protocol, smash that like button right now. Leaving a like shows you recognize the deep human toll behind these headline stories. Now I turn the microphone over to you. What do you think Prince William and Princess Catherine should do next? Type fortress in the comments below if you believe they should permanently remain behind the high stone walls of Kensington Palace. Type return if you believe they should fill those subterranean tunnels with concrete, fortify Adelaide Cottage, and go back home to give their kids a normal life. Or type revise if you believe royal estate security protocols across all historic properties need an immediate, top-to-bottom overhaul by Parliament. Your comments drive these crucial conversations, so drop your answer right now. I am Harold, thank you for watching, and do not forget to subscribe so you never miss an investigation. Before you go, click on the next video appearing on your screen right now. In our very next special upload, we break down an exclusive, newly surfaced intelligence file detailing a shocking security breach attempt at Balmoral Castle that happened during the family's summer stay. You will see the exact perimeter access log that was quietly altered from the inside. You cannot afford to miss a single detail. Click that video right now, and I will see you in the next investigation.